Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Hello, my name is Josh Sweeney, and welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the top 3 methods for executing employee satisfaction surveys. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Prototype Prime for this amazing podcast booth. If you're not familiar with Prototype Prime, they are a technology co-working space in Peachtree Corners, Georgia, and I recommend that you check them out. So, employee satisfaction surveys. These surveys are a staple item for a lot of companies to build an amazing company culture. When you engage employees to understand how they see the organization and their role in it, you'll always come away with items for improvement, areas that you can really take the company culture to the next level. Every organization we work with and that we interview seems to do it a little bit differently, but with some common themes and some common methodologies. So if you're thinking about employing or implementing any kind of employee surveys, we want to tell you about the top 3 models that we like and ones that we've seen used so that you can go try them out for yourself. So the first one is what is the Net Promoter Score. So a lot of people are very familiar with Net Promoter Score, except they're more familiar with it from a company to customer perspective. So for those of you not familiar with it, this is the automatic survey where when you work with a company, usually in support roles and other areas, that they send you this 1 question survey that's rank us from 1 to 10, with 10 being you would refer us to pretty much anybody and love us to death, and then 0 or 1 being we're not happy with the service at all. So very simple way to convey the message and a concept, Net Promoter Score, that a lot of people are familiar with. So what we see is we see people turn these internal. So they will send these out to the employee and ask them a question about their experience at the organization. So they're really looking for the one idea around, all right, would you not refer other people to this company, or would you refer your best friend to this company? And it's that kind of 1 to 10 type of scale. Now, in the Net Promoter sense, anything less than 8, roughly 8 or less, is going to be a bad outcome. It means you have things to work on. So there's some very clear lines of delineation. I am not necessarily a Net Promoter Score expert. There's lots of people out there that do that. But overall, you can look it up and understand how quickly and easily you can get a Net Promoter Score survey out to your employees to understand what's going on. Now, what are the pros of this? The pros of a Net Promoter Score type of survey to your employees are it's very easy to set up with any survey tool. So if you're using SurveyMonkey or something else, it's 1 question, scale of 1 to 10, very easy to communicate. Again, 1 question, and the results are very clear. There's not a lot of nuance. There's not a lot of text areas or boxes where you have to read a bunch of information to dig down into it. So that's the pros. The cons are, if the score is 8 or less from a person, what does that mean? Now you have to decide on the next steps. So, okay, they gave me a 6. Well, what now? Do I go have that awkward conversation around why they gave me a 6 on the survey that's supposed to be anonymous or is not anonymous? How do I handle that? How do we come to another conclusion and understand why it was a low score? So it doesn't tell you any deeper information around that score or give you ways to solve that problem. And it is a fairly one-size-fits-all model. So it's the same question going out to everybody. But again, very easy to use on that pros side. The next thing that we see, option 2 around the second method that we have, is custom surveys. So we see a lot of organizations do custom surveys. They'll come up with a set of questions and they'll send those out on a recurring basis. Some of them send custom surveys for questions that they want to know the answer to internally, and they're different every time. Some of them have very specific methodologies that they use from data and research around how to formulate the questions, so they get very detail-oriented around those questions. Some send the same questions every quarter and are looking for trends and consistency. Lots of different ways to go about that, but custom surveys is a very common way, also very easy. The pros around a custom survey are they're flexible and customizable to the organization. So you have lots lots of options around how that survey is formulated based on what you want to know from the employees. Again, very easy to set up with any survey tool, another pro. And then you also can get into more information for decision making. So if you have a survey tool that can be dynamic, where if they click yes or no or give it a low score and it automatically shows them another question, well, then you can dig deeper into the information. Very common way to do it. Now, the cons are a lot of times we don't see any real science behind the survey. So you can get to a point where you're just making up questions, and then you do this survey and realize, well, one of the 5 questions was less than helpful. So there's not a whole lot of scientific methodology behind that in some cases. Some people, again, dig into that. Depending on the creators, as I mentioned, the answers may not have as much value as anticipated. We've seen that sometimes where you get answers that you would have never predicted and that also don't provide the value that you'd like. And then again, they are a one-size-fits-all model. So you're usually sending out those questions to everybody in a generic sense. The last one in the third methodology, and the one that we like to use a lot of times, is the personality or behavior-based surveys. So personality behavior-based surveys is a little different because we're actually formulating questions based on each individual's personality. So what we do is when we give them a personality assessment, we look at their workplace reward factors, their top 5 ways that they're being incentivized and rewarded. And we're sending a survey out to that person for them to rank 5 factors that are extremely specific to them. We like this because it's a data-driven approach and there's a lot of benefits to that. And this can also be worked in with a custom survey in different ways. Now, the pros for this methodology are it's very data-driven. We're sending each person an individual survey specifically asking them to rank items that drive behavior for them and drive the work results for them. So you come back with a very clear set of items that you need to take care of. The survey is tailored to each person. So that's a pro in that it's not a one-size-fits-all. It is tailored to each individual. So it gets very specific. And then again, the answers tell you exactly where to focus. So if I say, here's the top 5 work rewards based on this person's personality and the data that we got from their personality assessment, and I'm asking them how we're doing on them, it's extremely specific to them. Now, just like all of the other ones, it does have some cons. It's obviously harder to set up. So you have to set that up and you're doing individual surveys to each person, which can be a little time consuming unless you use a service or work with a team like ours to get that done, or some other software that helps you do more dynamic surveys. You also have to utilize the right personality test. So not all personality tests are the same. Not all provide that information. Some of them provide that information as an add-on package that you may not have to what you're already doing. So, that can be a challenge in some ways. And then they actually require a little bit more training of the survey team. So the team doing that survey and analyzing the results are going to need a little bit more training on how to utilize that information. So as you can see, there's varying levels of employee survey options based on the methodology and the time that you want to utilize, and whether you're more data-driven, you're using personality assessments, or you're not, and based on your needs and capabilities as an organization. And we hope that you now have 3 different ways that you can utilize to send out your your employee satisfaction surveys and analysis type surveys. And what we want you to think about is, if you're not sending them, think about how you may be able to get started going in a very easy manner, maybe using Net Promoter Score or a recurring survey, all the way up to, if you are already generating those, how you can get more in-depth information that's really going to change the game in your business.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.